Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And yep, a little bit under the weather, but the show must go on because today I have a full tank review for you on the brand new Japanese Tier 8 Premium Tank Destroyer. This is the Type 5 Kahi. And this is the first Japanese tank destroyer in World of Tanks. And so it will also give us an idea of what the entire tech tree of Japanese tank destroyers is going to look like. This vehicle is pretty much as if you had a Ferdinand or a Jagdpanther 2 and you made it Japanese and you made it premium. That is what you need to know. Today I'm going to be letting you know whether it's actually worth gambling inside the loot boxes to be able to get this vehicle, or whether it's one you should skip, or for any of you out there who do skip it, what you have to look forward to for those Japanese tank destroyers. So the Kari comes with 127mm, which is 1mm less in caliber than the two vehicles I'm going to be comparing it to, the Ferdinand and the Jagdpanther 2. However, this slightly smaller Japanese gun actually hits slightly harder, 500 instead of 490 alpha damage, and having that kind of a caliber, 127, is incredibly useful for overmatching certain plates. For example, the BZ-176 will be overmatched by the Kari, whereas other 122mm will not be able to go through it. The downside to the Kari's gun is actually gets quite a bad rate of fire for a tank destroyer. 2,255 gives it more of the rate of fire, what should I say, a damage per minute of a heavy tank rather than a tank destroyer. So you're not going to be blowing up your opponents quickly like you're kind of accustomed to in the whole purpose of probably why you're playing a TD. Penetration on this tank is decent. 252 is pretty darn good, and it gets gold rounds with 298mm of pen. It's actually got good shell velocity for AP, 1150, and remember those will normalize slightly more than the APCR rounds of the German tanks. One thing that I do really like about this tank is the amount of ammunition it can carry. 40 means that you've got more than enough to take one of the aces up the Kari's sleeve, and that is that it gets 90mm of its HE pen. This will allow you to do more damage when you splash, and it will allow you to penetrate more heavily armored tanks. Think about a TVP 100, for example. 90mm is starting to get close to the point where you can pen the front of the turret, whereas the German tanks in this comparison, they only have 65mm of HE pen, which won't be enough to penetrate a wide variety of medium and light tanks. So good news for the Japanese tank destroyers, they might have very good HE rounds. And also just having all of that ammo means that at the end of the battle, you're not worried about whether you're running out of standard rounds APCR and you've got enough HE for using them flexibly. Gun handling wise, 2 seconds aim time is better than the Germans, accuracy is better than the Germans, gun handling is better than the Germans, and the gun depression slightly worse than the Ferdinand, but actually half a degree better than the Jagdpanther. And while its gun traverse is 12 degrees to the left and 12 degrees to the right, slightly worse than the Ferdinand's, but slightly better than the Jagdpanther 2. That actually makes this very responsive and quite flexible tank destroyer. And that 7 degrees of gun depression will actually allow you to depress this gun a lot more than a lot of people will realize. And that further amplifies your ability to make the top of the turret armor strong. So now let's take a look at the mobility of the vehicle. 40 forwards, it's much faster than the Ferdinand, but much slower than the Jagdpanther 2. However, look at that power to weight ratio. 16 2/3 power to weight, because this is a much lighter tank than the Germans, 45 tons, while still having a fairly comparable engine. That means that this thing is a lot faster than a Ferdinand and a Jagdpanther, even with the Jagdpanther having that slightly better ground resistances. The only problem is that the soft resistance for the Kari is awful at 3, which means that this will be very slow on soft, but you'll be getting up to your top speeds on your hard and your medium terrains, even before you've taken things like field mods to improve those ground resistances. Also, the tank traverse is excellent at 38 like a Jagdpanther, so you're going to be able to turn this thing quickly as well. Now let's take a look at the armor, and it looks like the frontal armor is amazing, but we actually need to have a much closer inspection of that, because Wargaming is suggesting 220 on the front of the hull and 300 on the front of the turret. But yeah, no, 70 on that lower plate and 25 on the lower plate, which is going to get overmatched. Truly horrendous armor. The upper hull, it's not so bad, especially if you are using the vehicle's 7 degrees of gun depression. But if you're not using any gun depression, even at 180mm is going to be able to go through it. Side armor wise actually becomes quite nice with a few ricochets here, unless you decide to start and side scrape, and then you can have a few issues against your opponents. But the real strength of this thing's armor has to be the superstructure here on the upper part around the gun. 220. So that means that all tier 6s and 7s are going to struggle, and some tier 8s are going to struggle to go through you when you aren't using your gun depression. But when you do, when you turn your gun slightly to the side, now it goes up to 243, and that becomes very usable for quite a lot of tanks. And the only vehicles that are going to be able to negate you are really those tier 9 and tier 10 tanks with decent penetration. And that makes this thing quite a scary prospect for just sitting hull down and going at its opponents. Something that the Jagdpanther 2 can do, but the Ferdinand has much worse armor, 20 millimeters worse armor on the superstructure, which is much easier to penetrate. And all in all, this Kari's armor, it's actually surprisingly quite good, as long as you don't just sit side on to your opponents, or you don't sit in front of something with very good penetration. So hit points wise, it's disappointing at 1,250. I was really hoping for a little bit more here, to have a little bit of leeway to possibly put a durability device on, like I do on a Ferdinand, where I start to have real tier 8 heavy tank hit points. But 1,250 is still not as bad as the Jagdpanther. One thing that is nice about this tank is the camo rating is much better than the German tanks as well, and the view range is actually 10 meters better than the Ferdinand and 20 meters better than the Jagdpanther, which means that when you have the field mods, as long as you use vents on this tank and a premium consumable and crew skills, you don't need coated optics. But if you don't have any of those things, you are probably going to need coated optics to be able to spot your opponents at decent distances. But for me, on my main account, with all of my crew skills, I will not be taking coated optics on this tank across any build. So as this is the first ever Japanese tank destroyer, I'm sure a lot of you will be very interested in the crew. It has a commander, it has a gunner, a driver, and 2 loaders, as well as a radio operator. This means that you probably don't need to have a brothers-in-arms crew on your Japanese tank destroyers, because there's no pressure on each individual crew member, especially those loaders, for example. You could easily get by with a standard crew on this tank, or if you really want to invest special brothers-in-arms crew members, maybe go for the gunner, the driver, and the commander. That'll probably be your best investment. Interestingly, this vehicle actually has the same crew loadout as a Type 5 Heavy, for example. So if you do have a Type 5 Heavy crew, you could move it into this tank, although you're going to have to retrain them to it because it is a tank destroyer rather than a heavy. So even though it's a premium, you will get a penalty. But for all of you out there who don't want to spend your hard-earned money on the Kari, but you want to be prepared for the Japanese tank destroyers in the future, then you might even want to start training up a new crew in your Type 5 Heavy or your Type 4 Heavy or even your OHO that will inevitably be moved to the new Japanese tank destroyer line. Of course, this might be the only Japanese tank destroyer that actually uses that amount of crew. I'm only theory crafting to really help you out here. Equipment wise on this tank, I'm going to be using gun rammer, vents, and a turbo. It will give me the mobility, a speed increase specifically, to get around. Because remember, this thing's got a great power to weight ratio, but its top speed at 40 is rather limited. So I want to do everything that I can to boost that up a little bit. Because this thing, with the turbo, it can actually start to hunt down mediums or contest medium flanks, as well as traditional heavies. My second build for where I'm on close quarters combat maps, where I'm going to be dropping the turbo and using a durability device instead. Some of you might want to use a rotation device, but considering the vehicle's already got very good rotation speed, it's also got pretty good gun handling. I really think you get better value out of the durability here to be able to get an extra 100 hit points and to also gain an impressive amount of track health. So field mods on this tank, it's real simple. You want to take reinforced suspension to have the improved ground resistances, especially on soft terrain. Then you want to improve the accuracy of the vehicle, and then you want to improve the view range of the tank. And for the slot, I'm personally taking a scouting slot, but in retrospect, I should have probably taken a durability because this tank doesn't need coated optics. However, if you aren't a premium consumable user and you don't have a good Japanese tank destroyer crew yet, maybe take the scouting slot for your coated optics for now, but then eventually, if you do get enough view range, then maybe you can drop that out for a survivability slot. In the end, it doesn't really matter too much because I'm going to put gun rammer and vents on both of these builds. But maybe the durability device inside a durability slot would be better than vents, or alternatively a gun rammer. Anyway, I think that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's see my first ever game in a Japanese tank destroyer. Okay, so here we go. We are rolling out on fjords inside a nice matchup against tier 8 tanks. Now, I'm not going to show you any gameplay in the video today against tier 10s. That's because really, this vehicle, all you're going to see is me kind of just dumping rounds in at long range. And so accordingly, you don't really need to see that. You don't need an imagination to think about how a vehicle whose armor is specifically set up to counter tier 8s is going to do against the 9s and the 10s. I can tell you this vehicle, as with any tank with armor, is vastly better at dealing with tanks of its own tier and less than it will be against higher tier vehicles. However, it's not exactly as if it's going to be useless against higher tier vehicles, especially with that wonderful premium penetration of 298 on its AP rounds. Now those will have better normalization. Remember, 5 degrees instead of 3 degrees compared to APCR. Unlike heat, however, they're not going to have that flexibility of being able to go up to like 85 degrees of angled surface. It'd be nicer if it did have heat, but AP and AP is fine. I'll take it. And the standard rounds on this tank are also pretty good. We're going to make some good use of them in this gameplay. I'd like to clarify in today's video, as always, as I have been trying to do now. I thought that maybe that T-44 really wanted to go past me there. I will be using standard equipment to give you a better idea of how the vehicle can be played without having some really fancy equipment on the tank. Apologies for coughing, it's probably going to happen quite a lot during this video. If any of you are concerned with me not seemingly like I'm getting better, I am. Originally, I'll tell you like a whole little rundown. Last week I had like a fever of 39, it went down to 38, and then it was just about to go down to 38, but then it went up above 38 again, and it stayed like that pretty much until yesterday, I think. And finally, my temperature went down to like a relatively normal 37, and it stayed there today. So, oh man, it just feels amazing to be finally getting better. Unlike this Borask, who is definitely getting worse at this game. Why have they not got a repair kit? This vehicle doesn't have, or not so much, why don't they have a repair kit? Why don't they have a repair crew? Because they allow me to just absolutely farm them up. Now, this tank, it doesn't have the best rate of fire, does it? The reload time base is 13.3 with the gun ram events and premium consumable. You're probably going to get that down to around the 11-second mark, or maybe even the 10-second mark. So there's no excuses there for the Borask to not be able to repair in 10 seconds or so. This tank at long range, you're going to see that the gun handling's pretty good, the accuracy is pretty good, and it does dump in its rounds fairly consistently. It's definitely not perfect, but it's also not bad. I'm looking at that Scorpion, I'm thinking, why don't we load an HE shell and go after it? But unfortunately, the 7 degrees of gun depression is enough to be able to work here, but I don't quite manage to react quick enough to catch the Scorpion there. I should have fired in retrospect. However, that was a clean shell into the UDES. And you'll see that I'm angling my armor up here. I bounced the first shell from the UDES, the second shell from the Lerva, not so much. And look, as I showed you, if you use your gun depression, your turret armor can go up to about like 240 millimeters effective. If you really, really tilt the tank upwards, it's still not going to handle 300 millimeters that well. The premium rounds on the Lerva do have. But you can see we're making trades, right? Finish off the Borask, 500 into the UDES. It does feel like this thing hits. It's harder than the Scorpion G, but less than the SU-130 PM, right? Right in the middle, a new 500 alpha damage tank in the game. Oh yeah, right into the rear of the CS-52 lease there. I will take that. And it doesn't take long for a tank like this to really add up damage in a game. Apologies, boys and girls. We're going to get through this though. Unlike the CS-52 lease, who is definitely not going to get through this, as we do manage to finish them off, putting our second round into the Tier 8 Polish medium tank, now up to a respectable 2,700 damage. This kind of a tank at this distance, it just feels decent. I'd like to highlight the gameplay while I was talking probably a few minutes ago, when I was just sitting aiming up at the Borask and aiming up at the T-77. I managed to get away with that, unlike getting away with this shot against the BZ-176. However, what you're going to see here is that I'm not able to quite go through him from the side angle there. But look at this. 127mm on this tank can overmatch the entirety of the roof, unlike 122mm. So that is a significant advantage. And while we don't exactly get even for the 753 damage that BZ-176 stole from me in this game, at least we get a little more even against him there, returning a fire for 560 damage, which is a rather nice high roll. So come on, little T-77, come round just into the corner just for me. And I'm hoping this SU is going to go and have a little peek as well, but unfortunately it doesn't look like it's my lucky day. So in this scenario, it's neck and neck. We've got 6 deaths on each team on either side, 9 tanks left going at it. And the hit points, after the frag there by the Renegade on the Kampfpanzer, are fairly now one-sided towards my team. But it's still close, we've got to watch out for it. And there you go, the new Tier 8 tank destroyer, destroying the most popular Tier 8 tank destroyer in the form of the Scorpion G. It doesn't look like Super Mario 17 was quite aware of the scenario there. And it is amazing how this vehicle can actually be quite responsive. Do you see that traverse speed? Do you see how fast it is forwards with that great power to weight ratio? When you easily make the addition for a turbo, because you can on a tank like this because of the view range and the field mod, then that just gives you like a little bit extra. And it doesn't feel like a slow tank destroyer getting around. Now don't get me wrong, it's not like a Scorpion G. It's not like an SU-130 PM. Those are fast tank destroyers. But this one, on the other hand, it has armor, unlike those two vehicles, which has been pretty useful. We would have died if we were in a Scorpion G or an SU-130 PM here. And this isn't even the kind of like nicest matchup you could get in this vehicle. If you're meeting tier 6s or tier 7 tanks, I can tell you that 220 millimeters of turret armor is going to go a long way. And that's 220 without using your gun depression and without turning your gun to the side as well. Remember, it goes up to 246. Most tier 6, tier 7 tanks aren't going to stand a chance of that kind of a scenario. So unfortunately, this bush at the front here, which I wasn't quite close enough to, actually stopped me from spotting the defender as they were coming around the corner. But look at this. The clap one and, woo, saved us there. Look at that, right into the cheeks of the tank, bouncing a shell from the defender. And it's what I actually really enjoyed about this tank for my games that I played in it, that you can be cheeky, and you should be cheeky in a vehicle like this. It has some armor, enough armor to mean that you can get away with things. However, when you've got a quick, responsive, low aim time, accurate 127 millimeter like you do on this vehicle, more often than not, you are actually very punishing against your opponents. And that is what I absolutely love about this tank. The fact that we can take those risks. And quite often you're going to come off better in the trades. So unfortunately for the AMPT there, they've actually got some horrendous low rolls, so they couldn't manage to finish off the T26E4 by themselves. I didn't quite manage to get the extra shell in, but unfortunately, I think it was the AMX CDA, was it? Yeah, he's the only one who has a kill, so it must be him, or maybe the Scorpion got him. One of the two other tier 8 tank destroyers managed to get him. Listen to my voice as I regress into more of a QuickyBaby right now. Oh man, it's kind of funny. It's so weird. It's also so bizarre right now to feel great, but then to have this voice. Like, I kind of wish I was at school again. I could probably just like go in and go, oh, yes, I am not feeling too good. Please let me go home today, Mr. Teacher. Like, what did I just become? Did I just become, who is it? Who is it? Jimbo and, is it Ned in South Park? I can't remember. You're gonna have to let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, I reckon with a voice like this, I could probably get off work quite easily. Unfortunately, these days, I'm self-employed, right, as a streamer, and I don't want to be off work. I want to be streaming. I want to be making YouTube videos. So I'm just hoping that my continued recovery will enable me to do that. It's funny that, right? When you're a kid, you want to be, you don't want to be sick, but you don't mind being sick because you get to stay home and play video games. Now, being sick means that I don't actually get to play video games, at least for all of you lovely ladies and gentlemen out there. Alright, so I tell this Renegade that I'm going to help them. I'm expecting that the SU is still in the bushes, so I don't really want to go too much further forwards here. I think they're still sitting in that location. Although it looks like the SU is actually over towards the left, so we're going to lurch around the corner, see if we can be able to come and find them. Renegade finishes them off, which means that now, hopefully, we can get forwards and find the artillery. But there's an AMPT, and there's also a Scorpion, and a Renegade that's a little bit faster than us in this kind of a scenario. And the artillery misses, and the Scorpion G finishes them off. So we were definitely a little bit slower there than the German tank destroyer, who ends up upside down in the water. Yes, very good. Very good. I mean, good kill secure there. And to be fair, I would have probably done the same as well. So what did we see about the Type 5 Kahi inside this game? Well, we saw that while it doesn't have the gun or the mobility of a Scorpion G, its armor allows it to play in a different way. And that makes this tank a lot more matchmaking dependent than your Scorpion G. Scorpion G, better for tier 10 games. Kari, probably better for your tier 6, 7s, and possibly your 8s. Alright, so now we are rolling out on Empire's border, of course, the one and only corridor map where you have to make a choice as to what flank you want to attack and hope that your team are competent enough to be able to win their flank as well. For the inevitable reason that the voice is usually lost. Hold on, did I say voice is usually lost? I'm going to pretend I meant to say that as a joke, right? The bass is usually lost. Oh my gosh. QuickyBaby, what are you doing? You can tell, obviously, having to rest so much over the last week has left me actually really hungry for this video. I'm actually having a lot of fun with this video today. Maybe that's what I needed, a little bit of time off YouTube. Or I look at it like this. It's when the things that you do kind of get taken away from you that you really appreciate it. And so honestly, man, the last few days I've been wanting nothing more than to just be able to get well enough to start blooming streaming and making YouTube videos again. So sad, but it really makes me realize why I've done this for 10 years. I must love it. Genuinely must love it. Weird. All right, anyway, let's me focus back on track. And that is, what is the car going to do here? Well, I want to try and hope that this T28 is going to come up. Come on, Mr. T28. Yeah. No, it's not going to happen. Obviously, I'm not playing this live. This is a post-game commentary. I wish I could do that. I wish I could change the past just by using my mind now. Maybe with a voice like this, I can do it. No, possibly not. Yeah, man, this thing just claps. It really does. 525 damage. Good luck, Mr. Tier 7 Heavy. And I can come up over the ridgeline, bounce his shell off my awesome upper hull armor here. Upper structure armor. Superstructure. I want to just call it that superstructure at the top. Bounce him. And I'm just hoping that he's going to do something silly like come after me here. Now, what happens when the Tier 7 Heavy doesn't want to fight you? And you're just going to have to find these positions, boys and girls. These are the kinds of positions that you are going to have to master if you want to do well in the Kari. This tank's a lot like a Yak Panther. However, I hear that the T28 fires, so I'm going to come around the corner, blap them for 500. Take one from the AMX M445, not ideal. But look at this engine power and this reverse speed right now. Unfortunately, I'm going to take one from the T28, but it's the last thing that he's going to do in this game. Hits me in the lower plate, as we can see there. And wow, yeah, the Kari from that kind of an angle looks actually quite an intimidating trader in close quarters combat. In Wargaming's video where they were talking about the loot crates that you're going to have to purchase if you want to be able to get yourself one of these tanks, they said that it's kind of a tank that's meant to go into the town and it's meant to support the heavies. Sure, you could do that, or you can just play it on kind of like the medium flank and just use ridges and try and go against the mediums or some of the other heavies that go into these positions. Now you're going to see that you can kind of actually go up over a ridgeline very well in this tank. We bounce a Stura mill off the top of the vehicle, and boy, happy days. It's really nice to be playing a tier 8 tank destroyer like this that isn't something like a Turtle or a TS5 that has a bit of mobility, that actually has some armor as well. We bounce the AMX, and now I'm going to face hug him. And he can't aim down on my hull, he's panicking. So we get to finish him off. And just like that, up to 3,000 damage and 3 kills. Can we add another to the tally as the T29 is on? No, I guess not. Yeah, I hope we're not about to lose my voice again. I'm just joking, I knew at that time. Hope we're not about to lose base this time. Oh dear. I'm telling the Progetto to fall back. And something weird is going to happen here, boys and girls. Something very weird is going to happen here. So let me just go towards the Progetto quickly. He's just going to sit here. He is just going to sit here. Yeah. You're just going to sit here. You realize what that timer at the top of the screen means. There's the AMPT's in the base now. What's your plan? What's your plan, Mr. Progetto? What's your plan? Oh, I give up. I give up. I give up. That guy had one mark of excellence. You know, he can't be that bad of a player, right? Unfortunately, doesn't really understand how the map works, or maybe they just tunnel visioned and didn't see the timer at the top. And so unfortunately that means that, yeah, the voice is lost, or the base is lost. Gosh, this map is so annoying from that perspective. We're going to get hit by the UDES. I'm going to come around the corner. Actually going to manage to kill this Tiger just before the end of the game. The UDES swings and misses, otherwise they could have picked up another frag and don't quite manage to get another one in against the IS. But again, this game is quintessential stuff for the Kari and how you're going to have to play if you want to be successful in this tank. A bit crazy. Use the armor. We managed to block 1,250. Pressured with our alpha. Pressured with our DPM. Pressured with literally face-hugging our opponents as well. And with that, I had some pretty good games for this tank. So the first game that you saw was an ace tanker for the Kari, although I don't expect that will stay an ace tanker as soon as this vehicle is released, as it was only 1,249 base experience for our 4,770 damage dealt, 3 kills, and because this is a premium tank, you're going to make yourself some extra credits, as you can see here. And I'll show you the bounces that we received, just to show you how random it is. T77 off the superstructure. Then the Borask off the gun mantlet. The Udez bounced off the superstructure there as well. The Lerva gold round went through the mantlet. The PZ-176 right through the side there. And that defender off the cheeks. This is just your bread and butter Kari gameplay. This is Wargaming have basically tuned these cheeks to be able to be a bit better than the Ferdinand that doesn't really bounce a lot. And it's just perfect for tier 8 standard rounds. So if you see this tank, don't fire tier 8 standard rounds at its superstructure. Load the gold, you'll go through it pretty much every single time. Or just shoot the hull and you'll go through it every single time. And that's really my main tips and tricks for the Kari. So the Japanese tank destroyers, all in all, are they looking like they're going to be special? I think they'll be kind of similar to the Jagdpanzer E100 in design. Very similar to that German tank destroyer line. That's not a bad thing. I think they're quite fun. Now, what do I think about the Kari? Do I think that it's an overpowered tank? No, this is not an overpowered tank. It's not bad, not by a long shot, but it's not good. This isn't a great tank destroyer. I think the vast majority of players will do better. It's something like a Scorpion G for sniping at long range, especially when you get into those tier 9 or tier 10 matchups. And the other players are going to do better in something like a TS5 or even a Vipera. This thing, it's not worth gambling to be able to get it. I'll do a quick passing mention as to what you'll have to do to be able to get your hands on this tank. I talked about it in a video yesterday. It's available, I think, for only about a week inside the special emerald boxes or whatever they're calling them inside the Shamrock event. Now, your chances of being able to get this tank if you don't already have a tier 8 premium, for every 50 boxes you buy, which I guess is going to be about like $50 or $100, I don't know how Wargaming are going to price it, you will have a 1 in 9 chance of being able to get it. However, if you're a tank collector and you have every vehicle that's ever been out in the game so far, you'll already have 7 out of the 9 tanks that are going to be available. There are 2 new ones, this one and a skin for the SU-130PM. So that means that if you already have all of the other vehicles, you're still going to have to buy 100 boxes to be able to guarantee yourself to get this tank. Is this tank worth 100 boxes? Hell no. Especially considering the boxes don't have gold. Honestly, Twitch, or YouTube, sorry, this is one that I would probably skip out on getting. I think it will be available in the future. And while a lot of you will be thinking, oh, but it's my chance to be able to train a crew for my Japanese tank destroyers. Whatever, man. Just go train them up in a Japanese heavy tank. And while they're not going to be making extra crew training, at least you're not going to go get fleeced for $50 or $100 by Wargaming to be able to get your hands on this tank. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for the Type 5 Kari tank review. Really hope you enjoyed this video or it was useful for you. If it was, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the Type 5 Kari in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.